Dr. Sibghatullah Khan. He's the assistant professor in National University of Modern Languages in Islamabad. He also requested me to share my screen along with his presentation. So I'm going to share that, and you can just give me the confirmation if it's visible or not. Uh, Sir, is it the right file that I've opened?
Yeah, that is the one.
Right. So from here, I would like to give you the mic. You please continue.
So, am I visible and am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, thank you. Uh, the title of my paper is "This is Posthuman, Isn't It? Teaching Online in COVID-19 Pandemic Times." Uh, as the title of this conference shows, we are trying to come to terms with the demands of online teaching and fix issues that we are facing while operating from virtual classrooms. The problems of online teaching exist both for teachers and students, but since students are on the receiving end as the eventual beneficiaries of the online system of education, they have larger stakes involved. Since most of the papers in this summit are on the mechanics of online teaching, mine is entirely focusing on the academic and theoretical side of online education. Therefore, I do not prefer to consider teachers as teachers and students as students. I would instead like to call them humans transforming into agents of post-humanism. From now on, we are going to live with what Rosie Braidotti calls humanistic nostalgia. Since we have had these 4 or 5 centuries of humanism and enlightenment movement, so now probably we'd be living in the nostalgia of humanism. So Rosie Braidotti calls humanistic nostalgia in her essay Biopower and Necropolitics. If nothing else so far has clearly defined departure from humanism, COVID-19 pandemic has effectively questioned anthropocentrism or the centrality of the human. Online teaching in the times of COVID-19 pandemic is an affirmation of the decentering of the human subject with its normative agentive role. The kind of calm and complacence we require to expound poetry and philosophy in the sanctum of a university classroom for in-person interaction between students and teachers is no more available. The role of a teacher as a Cartesian, autonomous, and thinking subject, having the capability of driving all concepts home to his or her students, has suddenly been questioned because of the necessity of their dependence on IT, Androids, laptops, and e-classrooms. In her compelling article in the New Yorker on April 11, 2020, What Do the Humanities Do in a Crisis? Ignis Callard rightly observes that moving classes online means replacing the shared clean space of the classroom with a collection of private and cluttered rooms, even when we cannot see the piles of dishes and laundry or hear the children yelling, the cares that lurk in the background divide and distract us. Many universities are expanding their pass-fail options, an acknowledgement of how hard it is to keep the coronavirus out of the room and to keep Horace or Aristotle in it. The reason is that the concept of modern university that has operated so far is in sync with humanist claims that with the use of reason and scientific enlightenment, we can impart education productively and thus create a viable society capable of reaching its goals of progress and advancement. In order for me to support my argument, I have invoked Ted Kaczynski's concept of objectivist posthumanism that emphasizes the role of the non-human agents of all sorts that include plants, animals, computers, environment, and other things. My focus is on computers, IT, and whatever it entails. Since objectivist posthumanism questions, challenges, and encounters the subjective or intersubjective aspect of the human, the entire trajectory of humanism gets naturally contested. Since posthumanism popularly reduces the humans to the status of one natural species only, the anthropocentric claims of humanism stand rejected. Simultaneously, posthumanism is a phenomenon that seems to be bringing the non-human at par with the human. If environment is one of the beneficiaries of online teaching, no more paper use, no clutter on campuses, no consumption of fast food and carbonated drinks, no smoking in the campus. And if Corona persists, we are left with serious questions about the AI takeover, I mean, artificial intelligence takeover, the birth of cosmisms, and a future without humans. I have paraphrased Degaris's idea, even if the possibility may still seem remote. Since I myself am a great believer in the centrality of the human, it is the primacy or superiority of human consciousness, however, which is likely to dispel doubts about the extinction of humanity. But that is a highly contestable and inflammable position. Coming back to my main concern, employing Ted Kaczynski's concept of objectivist posthumanism, this paper argues that online teaching is a takeover, though partial, of the subjective that remained central to humanism for centuries. That leaves us with the idea that replacing classroom teaching with the virtual pedagogical practices through electronic gadgets, Android phones, softwares, Zoom, Google Meet, LMS, its big blue button, Bandicam videos, A-power recorders, WhatsApp, cam scanners, to name a few, is tantamount to problematizing, revising, and fracturing the human subjectivity and agency. The mutual distanciation of teachers and students instantly morph into their simulated presences in online teaching. Mesha Gessen notes in her essay how the coronavirus pandemic has shattered the myth of college in America, that it's impossible to argue that online instruction, even when exceptionally well executed, delivers the same quality of education as in-person teaching. This change not only reduces real-time teaching to a silhouette, but also vindicates the hyper-reality of virtual teaching. This calls into question the existing reality of normal face-to-face teaching. What has happened is perhaps more real than the real pre-corona world in which teaching was happening. It reminds us of what Jean Baudrillard had observed in his 1986 book, America, that in some sense, Disneyland is more real than the real America in which it was built. I'm quoting from Macy. The signified playing the signifier, and vice versa, feed into the new normal with a sense that Baudrillard was perhaps mistaken in claiming that the Gulf War did not take place in real. His book, 1995 book, The Gulf War did not take place. The reason being, that virtual teaching is by all means taking place when the space between the signifier and the signified is blurred and the non-human IT, e-classrooms, softwares, and devices moves to the center stage. The human subject is consequently not only fractured, but also parasitic. We are impelled to agree with Ehab Hassan, who had predicted in his 1977 essay, Prometheus as Performer, towards a
Very
post-human
nice.
culture,
Very good
that
presentation.
we are impelled to agree with Ehab Hassan, who had predicted in his 1977 essay, Prometheus as Performer, towards a postmodern culture, that we need to understand that 500 years of humanism may be coming to an end as humanism transforms itself into something that we must helplessly call post-human. Dear audience, we are perhaps geared towards revising our concept of a university and also education. It might just be the beginning, but our teaching is heading for a post-human mode that plays down the centrality of the human agency. All of you have had a first-hand experience, and I don't need to push the point any further. All I can say is that COVID-19 pandemic calls attention to a society that is based on equality for the human and the non-human. That may give us humans an ethical edge over the non-human when we let them move to the center stage. I will wrap up on what Corey Robin writes in his essay. The pandemic is the time to resurrect the public university. And Corey writes, the coronavirus has seeded a much needed conversation about building a more equal society. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was a
If
really expert opinion, I would say. A very nice thesis and analysis.